but I want to say welcome and good evening to everybody here tonight. My name is Houston Cypress, and I'm from the Otter Clan of the Miccosukee tribe of Indians of Florida. And I'm just setting a timer here so I can keep track of my time. But I want to say thank you again and welcome to everybody for joining us. I am currently on the Miccosukee Indian Reservation, which is halfway between the two coasts of Florida. We're right in the middle of the peninsula. And as we come together on these Monday nights, I want to emphasize that we are friends, we are collaborators, and we're all trying our best. And we should put this in our hearts and our minds as like a workshop, because we're going to be crafting ideas, crafting statements, working on plans, refining them. And so it's going to take a little bit of time for us to give some focus or some specificity to what we're working on. But if we were to have a vision for this series of workshops, I think I could categorize it under three major themes. We're going to be learning, expanding our knowledge, thinking about new things sometimes. So we're going to be learning and expanding our knowledge. That's number one. Number two, we're also going to be hearing from guest speakers, many of whom are from a variety of indigenous communities, a variety of backgrounds. So that's the second major thing that we're doing. We're going to be listening to our guest speakers. And finally, the third thing that we're going to be doing over our time together is activating our intentions, putting them into action. Maybe we might want to think of it a little bit differently, perhaps as service or volunteerism. I like these ideas of service and volunteering because I think that that's when we put in or we activate the highest of our human potential when we're helping other people, when we're helping our family members. And when we think of family, let's expand that notion of family to all of nature, to all the animals and species and minerals and life on this planet. We are all earthlings together. And so I want to just take a little bit of time to let you know what I did last week, because I think it goes along with this idea of service, of activating our highest potential. And so when I think about those kind of ideas, one of the people that I think exemplifies that the best is a woman from my community. But in her sense of family, she embraces people from Miccosukee tribe, from Seminole tribe, and from people that are independent of federal recognition. And so the woman that I'm talking about is Betty Osceola. She is a grandmother, she is an educator, and she is a member of the Panther clan, the Panther family. So last week on Monday afternoon, she was given an award by the Friends of the Everglades. And this award that she was given was in honor of another elder, another person who stands or protects nature. And so this award was in to continue the legacy of a woman named Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. And so Miss Betty Osceola from the Panther clan has been advocating for the sacred, defending the sacred for many, many years. And I think one of the most powerful ways that we can do these kinds of activities is through the education. Because sometimes if we look at the historical record, we can see that miseducation has brought us to a lot of these challenges that we're facing in these times. And so Betty is an amazing educator, and I'm so happy that she got her recognition from the Friends of the Everglades. So again, let's think of this as a workshop among friends, a workshop among collaborators, and let's try to stay action-oriented. Before we get started, I also want to let you know of some recent calls for support that just came out of the Miccosukee tribe of Indians of Florida. There is action right now to change the status or the designation of the Big Cypress National Preserve. And the federal government wants to impose a wilderness designation that will be harmful to Miccosukee rights. So we're putting out a call now to oppose the wilderness designation in Big Cypress National Preserve. I'll have some more information about that later, but I just want to say thank you very much for everybody for joining us, for opening your hearts to the possibility of helpful and reparative action across this land. The main thing this week is that we're going to be getting to hear from a very distinguished person, Ms. Mary Lyons, and we're going to learn the connection between settler colonialism and climate change. And so we have a lot to share with you tonight and over the next few weeks. I'm going to pass it over to my good friend Holly to introduce our guest. Thank you, friends.
Thank you, Houston. Well, it is my pleasure to introduce my dear friend, Great Grandmother Mary Lyons. We're so fortunate to have her here today. She just gave a big wave as our guest. And it's customary to have a welcome opening prayer from an Indigenous person, an elder, if they're available, followed by a land acknowledgement from a guest on the land. So Mary Lyons, Great Grandmother Mary Lyons, belongs to the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe in Minnesota. She's a spiritual advisor. She's a water protector. She's a storyteller and a wisdom keeper. She travels and teaches internationally with many Indigenous grandmothers. And Great Grandmother Mary is the founder of the Minnesota Coalition on Fetal Alcohol Syndrome and the Indian Child Welfare Act expert witness and a Native American family and child advocate. So without any further ado, I want to hand it over to you, Mary, to give us an opening prayer. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that nice introduction. It's an honor, first of all, to be asked to be in this space. So I want to say Chimigwech. We always start off with a reminder of our seven grandfather teachings. So I'm just going to start off with just a brief blessing. Kichimani do, great spirit. We come to you as humble people that are willing to do the caretaking of what we promised. Within these obligated commitments to keep the healthy seeds of our children and the fruits of our homelands pure, we will remind and carry the memories forward of what an organic way of life that was gifted to us in the beginning. Kichimani do, great spirit. Allow each of us to feel your breath in the winds. Allow us to join in your breath so that we may walk another gifted day. Allow us to feel the warmth of Grandfather Sun and the beauty of Grandmother Moon. Allow us the passages and pathways of our ancestors, so we all will continue to recede. Kichimani do, great spirit. We come to you for your wisdom and your guidance. We come to you to listen with sharp ears so we may hear what is expected of us. We come to you to nourish our memories of yesterdays so we may never forget who we really are. We come to you with the weight of shame. We ask you for forgiveness and to set our burdens down. Knowingly, we have learnt from these mistakes. Kichimani do, great spirit. Make each of us wise so we may understand our fellow neighbor. Make each of us grateful so we may spread the healing forward. Make each of us strong. Give us the courage so we can move forward in a good way. Make each of us mindful and be kind and carry an open heart. Kichimani do, great spirit. Bless each and everything within Mother Earth with love, respect, bravery, truth, honesty, and humility. But most of all, may each of us carry our ancestors' wisdom forward. Chimigwech, 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 Chimigwech Kichimani do. Miigwech. I believe I'm going to be speaking a little later on. So one of the things I just want to lead into a little bit within part of this opening is that sometimes we have to, not too much as rebirth memory, but we have to awaken that inner spirit in us to remind us of our ancestors' memories, because, you know, they created a pathway so each one of us could be here And so what we don't want to do is we don't want to make sure their pathways that brought us here vanish. So we have to stay within what we, myself being an Anishinaabe Madewan, is that of the 7 teachings. And of those 7 teachings, everybody's right, no matter how they describe it. But I would like to just share with you my ancestral teachings of 7 generations. You see, I sit with my mother, my grandmother, and my great-grandmother. And now I sit with my daughter, my granddaughter, and my great-granddaughter. 3 that came before me and 3 that is in front of me. We believe we are that connection, that lock, that 7th generation. Because without it, we lose the knowledge and the memory of times past. So we need to keep that connection fulfilled. So I want to say, Miigwech, let's have a beautiful, good neighborly conversation. I'm excited to be here. And I will talk more on my pathways and my journeys through this time here later. Thank you, Holly. Back to you.
And this is Houston Cypress again. And I want to say thank you very much to Great Grandmother Mary Lyons for your comments, for your prayers, and for your teachings. Thank you so much. So do we have any volunteers of somebody who would like to share their land acknowledgement?
I can.
Okay,
It's me, Great Grandmother Mary Lyons again.
all right.
I just had a little, I picked up a little sweet and put it in my mouth. So first of all, I want to apologize for that, but this chocolate is excellent. But one of the things with land acknowledgements, you know, being an Anishinaabe, I reside on the Dakota lands, and the Dakota lands of just south of Minneapolis and St. Paul, and the reservations here, Shakopee and Prairie Island, Upper and Lower Sioux. And when we migrated over, you know, we were very fortunate, you know, there was somewhat of a conflict, you know, saying that some of the Anishinaabe kind of muscled their way in. But I mean, I think, you know, you kind of go where Creator wants. So anyways, I'm very blessed to be on the ancestral lands of the Dakota people, you know, because they've had experienced so much trauma in that here. And now that the restoration of their truths and their lands and all this that's coming to fruition here on these lands and out there, we're so honored to bring this recognition of who the original gardeners are, right? Because Creator put us each in a spot to know what our lakes, our air, our fruits, our berries, and everything are. And this beautiful land that I'm on is Dakota land. So this is why I have to always acknowledge this, and also within a prayer, say my silent prayers to their ancestors, to promise them that I will do my best to take care of what they took care of, because I'm in their living room. You know, I'm in their living room. So it's, you know, by right, what we must do is learn who the original gardeners are of the lands that you're on. Because one of the things I can say is what makes me so sad, or even elders sad in that there, is I can go anywhere here in the free world, and within this free world, people will ask me, who are you and where you're from? And here I'm on my own lands. And I said, United States, and even in Canada, this part of our territories, Turtle Island, has the last recognition of history. So now that they're introducing land acknowledgement, it makes our hearts happy. But on the same makes us sad, because we can in turn ask another individual that may not be Indigenous and ask them where they're from. And they joyfully say, you know, oh, I'm from New Jersey, or whatever it is. And our sadness comes from is they forgot the pathways that brought them to our living room, to our lands. So we say this, and we share with individuals that you should never say, oh, I'm white, I'm black, you're somebody. And when you're somebody, is you honor those generations that came before you, because what they did and what they experienced was horrible. So we have to say, we're honored to be in Dakota Living Room and to let their ancestors know we'll do our best to take care of what was given to them. So Chimigwich, I hope that makes sense.
Mhm. Yeah.
Mato to the great grandmother Mary Lyons. That was beautiful. And this word that I say, Mato, is like a respectful affirmation. So thank you very much to the great grandmother Mary Lyons. And now let's check in with our friend Linda Seacrest.
Yes, I'd like to see maybe a show of hands as to how many people were able to access the homework or the resources, the videos. Was anybody able? Can you just put your hand up if you were able to watch them? Oh, great, great. So those of you who have your hand up, how did you feel about any of those things? What kind of struck you? What touched your heart? What moved you? Jess, I think you had your hand up. Jess Kovich.
Thank you. It's been a little while since I watched them, but I really think it was the one with the dancer was in this homework. Is that the correct one?
Yes.
I was really moved by the different ways that we can communicate, and through the art and the dance, I felt myself really wanting to know more and to learn more about that. But I also realized I have so much to learn about what is happening in the Indigenous communities and all around the world. And yeah, it opened my mind to a lot of that, and my heart to the dance too, and the creative relation to that.
I was touched by that one too. I watched it twice. It was so good. Okay. Anybody? Let's see, who else? Who else had their hand up? Okay, Carol.
And I also think
Okay.
Michelle Williams had their hand up for a second as well.
Oh, who was that? Who was that, Houston?
Another hand I saw was Michelle Williams, so we can check in with them after Carol.
After
Okay.
Carol.
Okay, just a couple of thoughts. Yes, I agree with what she just said. Very, very moving. Especially, the sense of, we are all connected, all species, in this in ecology, this environment. Couple of things. On another, I do want to say the reading of the Doctrine of Discovery. We discussed that last year.
Yes.
And I thought I understood it all, but I learned some more stuff just from reading this, which was very enlightening. And the other thing was the video from COP, from Mary Lyons, when she talked about the pipeline that originated in Canada, snaked down into the US, and then went back into Canada where all the recipients were. And she made, a very good point about why did it have to come down into the US when it was all originated and used in Canada? And I kept waiting, hoping to hear the answer, but I didn't. So I thought, oh, well, it's probably some governmental or high finance, whatever they did, but I would be interested to know. I mean, that was a very good point. And I had to wonder, why did they do it that way? Just to bring it down here, just to ruin some more stuff, and not even using the oil down here, and take it all back to Canada. They should have just kept it all up there.
Maybe tonight she'll will answer that question for you.
I'm hoping. Okay.
And Michelle Williams, where are you, Michelle?
I am here. Thank you
There
for
you
calling
are.
me out, Houston. I appreciate it. Um, for me, I focused more on the doctrine of discovery, and of course, I am an attorney, and one of the cases, of course, that we had to deal with was Johnson v. McIntosh, and I do recall at the time how deeply disappointed I was with the ruling and the fact that they were using this ridiculous doctrine to basically whitewash, as it were, uh, history and ignore everything that had gone on before and just justify all the evils that the colonialists had done to the native folks here. So that's pretty much what I was focused more on. But thank you again for bringing it forward and bringing up, all those those feelings back then.
Thank you. Do we have time for one more, Holly?
Yeah.
Okay. Who else wants to comment on the homework? Joe, do you have your hand up, Joe Ion? No. Okay. Looking,
I see Diana.
Diana. I don't see that, but Diana, where are you? Do you want to speak?
Yeah, sure. So, I will admit I didn't finish the whole homework, but I did get to catch a few of the videos and I really, really appreciate it. And I still want to watch it again, but the Ancestors and Land video, I really appreciated just like learning more about the Florida history. I forgot now the name, but I had written it down somewhere in my billing notebooks. But yeah, I really appreciated learning more about the history of so-called Florida and how the Miccosukee Seminole peoples were actually like one Aboriginal peoples, one group that was split in the 1900s. And I thought it was kind of funny. The video is a little hard to hear, but I kind of loved it because it sounded a little bit like I was on an airboat. Um, so I ended up listening to it while I was taking a shower, and I want to watch it again because I saw there are subtitles, so that'll obviously make it a little easier to hear it. And then I also really appreciated the video where I forgot the title, but it was one of the shorter ones where they were talking about the dance, and this two-spirit person was talking about how something about how like the dance helps them like it's an important message to also send to the youth and to the children that um to like be seen. And I forget exactly the wording, but I appreciated the message as like a queer person myself, and just having found like seeing others expressing themselves in that way really helped me kind of come into myself. And I appreciated learning that also from this more indigenous perspective. And also just really like the longer videos where the homework was to watch certain segments of like some of the chiefs. I think it was like the COP 28. I'm really looking forward to just like watching more of that because those were like longer videos. And that's really cool to listen to. Well, yeah.
They're very educational. And I too like the two-spirit dance when he talks about it's a prayer in motion and it's transcending gender. Those were two things that I took from that. Okay, let's see. I'll turn this now over to Gary.
Okay, thank you very much, Linda, and thank you, participants, for helping discuss that. Right now, we're going to talk about definitions, and we would like to have 3 people help us read a portion of our homework that is called What is Settler Colonialism? And could I have people raise their hands, please? And let's see, who can we have for 3 readers? I'm sorry, I can't because that's on the screen. I can't see everybody.
I'll
Don't
scroll
be
through
shy.
it.
We do need people to help out. We do need people to step in, and we got to keep it moving. So 3 people volunteers, please step up now.
Okay. I see Brooke. And who-
Jaime
And Miriam.
and Marianne.
Yes.
and Jaime also volunteered.
Okay. Okay, can we start with Jaime? If you would please read 1, 2, and 3, and just nice and slowly so that we can really understand what it is that that's all about. Please.
Gotcha. All right. Definition of settler colonialism. First, settler colonizers come to stay. Settlers intend to permanently occupy and assert sovereignty over indigenous lands. 2, settler colonialism is a distinct type of colonialism that functions through the replacement of indigenous populations with an invasive settler society. Settler colonialism destroys to replace. 3, it is a structural system, not an event in history. In this sense, settler colonialism does not really ever end.
Okay, thank you very much. I know when I first read these, I thought that settler colonialism was something that happened a long time ago, but we find out that it's really not, is it? Settler colonializers come to stay and permanently occupy and assert sovereignty over indigenous lands. And they come to destroy, to replace. And it does not ever really end. In other words, we are today still doing exactly what happened before in so many respects. Brooke, would you read 4, 5, and 6, please?
4, it denies the existence of indigenous peoples and the legitimacy to claims to land. 5, it aims to vanish indigenous peoples and replace them with settlers. 6, its logic of elimination requires the removal of indigenous peoples of a territory by any means necessary: homicide, child abduction, religious conversion, reprogramming, via missions or boarding schools, and myriad forms of assimilation. Again, settler colonialism destroys to replace.
And Brooke, what speaks to you most clearly of those 3? What elements really strikes you?
Can you scroll back up so I can, yeah, okay. All of it. Definitely the logic of elimination, and, you know, especially just thinking in South Florida about, you know, what's going on in the environment, and like how I think it's just dangerous to the indigenous way of life, that and makes it like impossible to do. And people, I think it's really people really underestimate the health implications and public health implications for what's going on in the environment in South Florida. I worked in public health. I know, like, and I don't know what it's going to take to wake people up to this.
Well, I hope that that's happening right now, today, here in this group, and we can make a difference in the people, in the contacts that we have. And certainly for me, the vanishing of indigenous people, we want to vanish them in so many ways in our society, it seems. And Marianne, would you read the 7, 8, and 9?
Yes, number 7. It continues to dispossess indigenous peoples. 8, it promotes white supremacy. 9, it requires arrivants to participate as settlers.
Do you see any of that happening in our society today?
I think what's really interesting is that it's essentially the same genocide we're seeing in Ukraine or Palestine even. It's, there's nothing new about this horrible thing. War is war. Colonialism is, whether we call it colonialism or we call it war or genocide, it's all still the same thing. It's kind of man's inhumanity to man.
It certainly is that, isn't it?
Yes.
Thank you for reading those, and hope this will refresh our minds from our homework and prepare us for our coming discussion. And now I believe I turn it over to Houston again.
Thanks, friends. Thank you very much for opening us up to these ideas and this topic. So I wanted to just take a moment to perhaps discuss these ideas of settler colonialism and link it up to the ideas of extraction and extraction colonialism. We've been doing some research on these terms, and here's a definition that I wanted to share with you that has been useful for us in thinking through. When we think about extraction colonialism, there is a focus on exploiting the natural resources of a colonized territory. And much of the time that happens for the benefit of the colonial power. And there is very little to no investment with little investment in permanent settlement or the long-term development of the region. Long story short, in the end, the natives always get the short hand of the stick or a bad deal. And this happens to be especially highlighted here in our region with the idea of mineral rights. So we have been witnessing coloniality in action here in South Florida, especially with regards to Miccosukee rights these days. Here in the state of Florida, a couple years ago, under the previous presidential administration, under Donald Trump's administration, there was a move to transfer some permitting authority from the EPA over to the state of Florida. And this permitting authority had to do with dredge and fill permits in the wetland areas. And this permitting authority comes in under the federal laws of the Clean Water Act, specifically Section 404. And when the EPA transferred this authority to the state of Florida, Florida was able to claim certain waters. And those waters that they ended up claiming were on Miccosukee territory. So that was a continued expansion and invasion of Indigenous sovereignty here in our region. Now, water happens to be at the very central focus of the Everglades Restoration Plan because they're trying to prioritize the use of water for agriculture. They're trying to prioritize the use of water for industry. And not very much has been said about the millions of gallons of water that is being used daily by the nuclear power plant in their cooling pools and in other machinery that they use every day. So sometimes people think I may not be connected to Everglades restoration, or I may not be connected to climate change issues, but even in how we charge up our gadgets, we are implicated in this. So that happens to be like the many communities that depend on water and how the water is being used these days by these industries and agricultural purposes. But when we also think about extraction in the context of the Big Cypress and the Everglades, we also have to remember that we have already experienced a fracking event in South Florida. Luckily, some of the activists were able to shut that down pretty quick, but that doesn't mean that it won't happen again. And so we're very wary of that. But beyond the fracking incident, there's mineral rights that are still owned by a private family in the Big Cypress National Preserve. And so they've been using those mineral rights to do oil drilling explorations. They haven't done the actual drilling. There's some drilling operations that are happening right now in Big Cypress, and they wanted to open new oil wells. They were not able to achieve that because of the attention that's being brought to the area. And now there's actually a plan that we're going to be discussing in detail in the next session. But basically, the plan is to purchase those mineral rights from the private family and put it into the public interest. If you want to learn more about that, we have some documents available in that we can send out to you. But these are just some of the things that we're dealing with right now when we're talking about extracting things from the land. But I think one of the most serious extractions that's being threatened right now is the extraction of the indigenous peoples from this land. I mentioned it earlier in the opening about the federal effort to change the designation of the Big Cypress National Preserve. And what is being proposed right now is to change the status into a wilderness designation. And a lot of parks around the country already have this designation. And I think Big Cypress may be one of the last places to be changed into a wilderness designation. But what will happen is that this will harm the right of access by Miccosukee people onto the land. We will be prevented from collecting our medicines, and it will be that much harder for us to practice our spiritual and cultural practices and beliefs in the area. So this is one of the actions that we're going to be asking for your support on, and we're going to need to move pretty fast on this matter. And I feel like there's a lot more to be said, but I also wanted to check in with some of y'all to see if you have any comments or things to share. Maybe we can discuss how settler colonialism is showing up in the climate movement. We've already talked about some examples of that here in Florida, but maybe have you been brainstorming on some solutions? Those are the kind of questions that I want to ask you and hear back from some of the participants here. How does settler colonialism show up in the climate movement? So I'm looking for a show of hands, or you can wave on the screen, but we wanted to hear from some folks who've given some thought to the matter. Do we have anybody that wants to share?
Mary Ann looks like she has her hand up.
Yeah, I just have a question. Will the wilderness designation be better or worse in terms of contracts that oil drillers are able to enter into with the Department of Interior?
That's a good question. I have to do some research on that. I don't know.
I think that the Department of Interior is led right now by a very positive person, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's an Indigenous person for the first time. And so you need to find out if that would actually help us protect it even better, because I was doing some work for the Air Force, and at that time, the Department of Interior was not led by an Indigenous person. And we had massive oil fracking wells on half of the Air Force base that I was at in Louisiana. And the point was that the Department of Interior was in charge of the land and could have any contract that it felt it wanted. And so that's a really important question, because even though it may seem like it would prohibit you from getting important plants, I think you could probably figure out some kind of a except for piece where hand plants, or the wilderness, the wording is really important here. And if you're able to stop all the fracking and the oil drilling for the future by doing it, then you just need to be real careful in how the wording is. And if they can do that now, or if they can't do it now, I don't know.
Thank you, Marianne. I appreciate those comments. It looks like we have Jan and Holly that want to share. Let's check in with Jan and then go to Holly.
So I just wanted to ask, because I know we had an attorney on here the last time, and I just wanted to know if anybody knows the process of moving to that status, if there's any public comment or public input to push for such an exemption, that that's the standard language that Indigenous peoples should be able to use their land for their traditional purposes. That could be an exception to it, if anybody knows that.
All right, we'll keep that in mind. Checking in with Holly and then to Kat.
Okay, I'll be very brief because I'm really anxious to hear Mary, what she has to say, Grandmother Mary, and I think that she might be very helpful in answering some of these questions.
All right, cool. So we'll check in with Kat and then we'll move on. But
Well, I
anything else
have
you wanna
one
say?
more thing, Houston. Just one more thing about extraction colonialism. I just wanted to mention that in the state of Florida and all around the country, that another form of that extraction colonialism is the sacred sites, the ancient sacred sites and the bones of the ancestors and the artifacts. There's a movement to stop them from being taken away and put in museums, and even some museums are giving them back. So I just wanted to mention that extraction is also of the actual artifacts and histories and bodies of our predecessors here on the land. And I just wanted to mention that, that's all. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Holly. Checking in with Kat.
I was listening to some of the conversation and with love. I think that sometimes in a group like this one, where there's so many different people from so many different backgrounds, that the cloak of whiteness kind of drops over the conversation. And I'm experiencing a lot of heartache and heartbreak lately around I guess, caging of medicine and spirits of other people that I love. When we talk about collecting plants or practicing medicine, I think that it is really difficult for some of us to see the idea of someone coming and camping in your church might not seem like extraction, but it is, or that my experience of wilderness areas, and I'm from the West Coast, there's a whole lot of wilderness areas, is that those tend to be designated for this, just another form of multiple use, rather than necessarily protection. And I am feeling, I guess, a whole lot of pain around a lot of it. Then other piece is that, of course, whoever is Secretary of the Interior now, there's a much bigger threat out there that we need to be aware of. We can't count on federal agencies if things go really badly. And giving them an increased authority might not be any protection at all. That what I would want to see is that, oh, and I know the other one was bones. Those bones
All right,
fall.
we do have to continue, so please, if you can be brief.
Yep, that's okay. I just wanted to say the part about bones. They were supposed to already be giving the bones back. Bones are supposed to be returning. There have been laws passed. They're just being delayed in the way they're followed, obstructed. Thank you. Bye.
I appreciate those comments, Kat. That's very powerful for us to keep in mind. Before we go on to our guest speaker, I just do want to say that this particular issue with the wilderness designation in Big Cypress has happened very fast. And it has happened so fast that the federal government and the people that are working on it did a paltry attempt at consultation. And our community, the Miccosukee tribe, only found out about this when the federal government had all of their support already lined up. So it's like a strategy, or like what they thought was a chess move to checkmate us out of the conversation. So that's why we only just found out about it recently because of the secrecy around this movement. And I think that that is a detriment to the consultation process that must happen. And somebody, I think it was Kat, who was saying that we cannot count on the feds to do this work. And I think that also underscores the kind of community-led action that we need to be doing on behalf of reconciliation or reparation, or even just defining the relationships that we need to define. Because how can we reconcile if we have never been together? So before we go on to our guest speaker, I want to check in with Casey super quick. They have their hand up. Please, Casey, make it quick. We want to hear from our guest.
Make it super quick. I just wanted to say that the Miccosukee tribe has wonderful scientists and legal counsel. And so if they are saying we need to take action on this, that's something that we should, fully support. So I just wanted to say that they have legal minds looking over these things and the protection. So, listening to the Indigenous folks that we're here to support is important.
Powerful comments, Casey. Thank you so much. And now it is my honor to pass the mic over to our good friends, to our good friend, Great Grandmother Mary Lyons. Thank you for joining us tonight. The floor is yours.
Oh, gosh. I just wish I would have listened and did all these things on the good neighbor things before. You guys sound very interesting. And it's like, it's really refreshing to hear all this information and so many different people in here that are, listening and learning and, and just having a safe place to have these, these conversations, this dialogue. Well, I don't know how much history you know about me, but, obviously I'm a elder. I'm a very blooming elder in this stuff, pretty much winking at her last breath here on Mother Earth. So a lot of times I don't beat around the bush. I have been with the United Nations Indigenous section for on and off for, I don't know, so many years in that there. And most people always say, oh gosh, that's wonderful, it's interesting. But what I think a lot of people don't really know is that this is 100% volunteer work. I am known as one of the global knowledge holders within that sector in this stuff. So I'm at a lot of the COP, those are conferences of the parties. And I, was recently at Dubai, and a lot of things you're speaking about is spoken throughout the world and out there. And what I'm about to express to you on my work in this stuff may come as a shock to many of you. Because one thing we have to have in common here is that we are of the oneness. And people go, well, I'm not really wanting to go on that path. No, it doesn't matter if you want to go on that path, you're here. Because, we say, when you enter this space, and being an Anishinaabe means people of the land. Being Medewan, and that's my everyday, that's my tool of existing on here, of living the good life, is that we believe we come from the stars. Our spirit comes down and comes into the mother's womb, and she builds this beautiful blanket of a body around our spirit up for 9 months. And we know water carries memory. Everybody knows that. Everything, there's memory in everything, right? So it was like we had this downloaded chip of every ancestor that had walked before us is in us. So we say we're not alone. Our ancestors are in us and all around us. Not just Indigenous people, but everybody, everything. It's in animals, it's in trees, it's in everything that's within life, within this planet and beyond. And so having said that, is that one of the mentalities that people have really banked on, and to make this work throughout time and that there, is if we can separate and conquer, which is known as to segregate, and to teach this segregation for it to take a life of its own, then quote unquote, whoever you think has mastered the hierarchy of you're going to listen to me. We talk about our history, and our history of being Indigenous peoples is that, and I want you to just take a minute to really think about it, because I think it's very interesting to understand the basics. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to say what you did to me or what happened. It has to do with the root of the problem and the reason. Now think about it. On our lands and our territories, what we call Turtle Island, which you know is Canada and the United States, if we were heathens, do you think we'd be having this conversation now? If those 3 little tiny ships or the French that came in, or, you know, whoever came in decide would have a voice? Absolutely not. We, we would have took everything out, right? And said, you know what, you're not coming onto our shores. But that wasn't the case. Indigenous people, along with many other people in this stuff, are good people. Curiosity, you know, let's feed you, let's do whatever it may happen. But the goodness is always present. But it's the intention behind some of those goodnesses that can be manipulated. And we usually call it, it's kind of like a predator or perpetrator that sits in the winds of the darkness and the evil in this stuff that will master it and mix up everybody in this stuff to try to lose himself within the confusion. Now, I know what I just said sounds like what, but exactly that is what's happening. Because one of the understanding is the most richest thing within on this planet right now that is slowly fading, and it's memory. If they can master and manipulate the loss of memory within everyone, everything, that hierarchy up there is winning. But the interesting point is, who is this hierarchy? Now, times past 100 years ago, whatever it may be, we can say the hierarchy was another human being. But today, now mind you, I want you to listen to this today, just as I am speaking through this computer. The hierarchy is artificial intelligence. They collect all the data, the information and stuff, and the people up here are depending on facts and figures to make their money and their profit and this stuff. No longer listen to people. But the thing is, who's putting that information in to make it a fact-based information for us to figure out what's right or wrong? We have too much of us invested as within our breath. Because remember, again, when we were born into the waters, our spirit should develop that body around, and then we took that first breath of air, felt the sun, the fire, nourished and planted our feet on earth. 4 elements, just 4 elements. And I always tell people, I hate to burst your bubble. And it's not even so much as myself being Indigenous or somebody being Caucasian from another historical race that's coming down. No matter what it is, the thing is, we're all of the oneness. We depend on those 4 elements. Those 4 elements show us no prejudice. And we were to come into this planet with the highest respect of these 4 elements, because if we lose one, we're all going to fall. So let's get that one thing straight. We have something in common here, is that we can talk until we're blue in the face about certain things in that there. But if we're not doing our due diligence on taking care of those 4 basic elements for us to survive within this planet, then we are those martyrs. We are those perpetrators. We are that dark entity that is just creating havoc. And the craziest thing is, that's why when I was saying earlier, you know, identify who you are and know your history and your journeys. You know, it's really lovely when we do land acknowledgement. You know what? I'm 7 or 8 generations that are living on this particular land, and my ancestors say it with such beauty. My ancestors come from Ireland. You know, they're Jewish, or, you know, they're Asian. Sing their stories, because that's memory. In that context of memory comes history, and that history is so organic. Now, another thing to think about. We created this chaos that's happening around us in less than 150 years. We lived thousands and thousands of years being organic. We didn't have to rush and go crazy because we didn't have toilet paper 150 years ago. We didn't have to feel we had to run to the grocery store to figure out if there's going to be no food during a pandemic. And what people don't realize is we have pandemics every 50, 75 years. It depends on how well the announcement has to be out there to put the fear in you. And when something like that happens, we have to pay attention to those 4 elements. You see, if something naughty is happening on one side of the world, and if we're not paying attention to it, and if they're doing a lot of factory and there's nobody monitoring all the chemicals and everything in there, that goes into Mother Earth's breath and it just comes around the world. And guess what? The United States and Canada is the most notorious where it settles. Have you ever wondered about why we have so many fires and why do they keep going in out there? We never had it 150 years ago, but the thing is, when something comes in the air, it's gotta settle somewhere and those chemicals will settle there. You have to know that what happens here is going to happen here, here, and here. We're in this together. We cannot escape it. And here's the unique thing. The earth is going to go on. It's just us silly people that'll just limit our space within this time. We cannot be that grandiose thinking that we're killing Mother Earth. No, we're killing the space that could almost say, one person said, yes, this is our Garden of Eden. Your Garden of Eden is what you make it and you're responsible to be. Us, for Indigenous peoples, it's sacred land. I found out traveling all over the world and speaking to elders and this stuff, their words are just like us Indigenous people's words. Everything is sacred. Everything has a spirit. So we're not all special within the unique way we're thinking. It's just that we all have the same unique value system of caring for one another. There's a reason why we have 2 hands. One's right and one's left. My father would say, you know, if you hang out for 50 years doing naughty stuff, those days are gone. Now you got your next 50 years to start doing something right or snap you out of it. You may not have those 50 years to find out what's right. You might not be able to leave the garbage that you've done. You may die in the garbage. So the whole thing is what we're looking at. When we talk about the ecosystem and out there, what's happening to it, that is just not a ripple within our neighborhood. It's a ripple throughout the planet. We can't say just an individual thing is causing this certain part within our area. No, that is if you threw a stone like what's in the back of me in a real calming water, a ripple effect will happen. We will all feel the naughtiness. There's no escaping it. None whatsoever. We always say to people too, well, I should know something. Well, here's one thought to think about. Just in your own space, in your own environment. Count how many liquor stores are in your neighborhood. Count how many drugstores are in your neighborhood. Count how many hospitals are in your neighborhood and cancer centers going up. You have to pay attention to your own environment because what these perpetrators are doing is they have mashed your memory so well that you don't even pay attention to what happens in your own backyard. Until something, as this last shakeup, 2.5 years, made us all stay home. And prior to that, the memories or whatever the conversations were, I'm sick and tired of work. I just need vacation. I need to do this. I miss my children. I need everything they wish for. It's like, it seems like everybody threw it to the universe and the universe granted your wish. And what happened within that? A lot of people had perished. They had passed on. A lot of it was because of poor health, that they couldn't fight it out. Divorce rates went off the charts. The other thing too is alcoholism. I mean, my gosh, if you ever invested in alcohol, which I don't, I'm 50 plus years sober, is that chaos comes in so many different disguises. But if our memory is, can you imagine? Let me just take you one more thing back. My father said to me, when you get up in the morning, you don't make your bed, you're not sleeping on it. You can sleep on the floor. It happened once. Now, it wasn't because he was being mean, because there was a wisdom lesson in there. He said, can you imagine my mother, my grandmother, because my father was born in 1889. His mother was 52 years old when she birthed him, and her mother was born in the late 1700s. Prior to that, can you imagine if they did not clean up their mess when they were moving for survival? None of us would be having this conversation. So we lost the pathways of those rites of passages. We totally warped into this space of chaos by free will. So the accountability, we have to say to ourselves, hey, I get it. Doesn't mean you're going to have to go out and, get this huge PhD in science or whatever it is. You just have to have common sense. Because can you imagine tens of thousands of years? We didn't have a whole bunch of PhD people and all this stuff. We had people that were built on common sense and respect in those 7 teachings in order to exist within this planet. But when those naughty people come in, the first thing is, let's destroy the memory, let's destroy the family life, let's just instill fear in them, let's just create this chaos of a whirlwind. And me, for where I'm coming at, is, have you ever had a really good thing that's going on, and then there might be somebody in your family or something, an alcoholic comes in and starts chaos and stuff, they go and everybody's all frustrated, and that person that was an alcoholic that started it still going on his merry way, and the chaos is still left here. You can do it as if they were a drug user or whatever it may be. But the thing is taking your own power back and your own responsibility and paying attention to what is happening in your environment. It's even so much as even the littlest things. Don't use plastic. Sometimes you may forget, but try to use that plastic over as many times as you possibly can. I know I've got bags and this stuff, and sometimes I forget. Doesn't mean I'm just going to toss them. I'm going to make sure I can use it until it's blue in the face and I wash and do whatever it may be. I make sure I separate, even things with even eggshells and this stuff. I may bake them up over again and redo them in compost or whatever. Simple little things. Because there's somebody watching you. Somebody's going to pick up on your habits. Everyone that is sitting in this cyberspace here, all your ancestors, no matter what denomination, what color, wherever it may be, they all had this organic way of life within them. They had this responsibility. They never had this massive things where I'm going to have 10 pairs of shoes. It's lucky that they had 1 pair of shoes for 50 years or whatever it may be. We didn't need this massive need for everything. The only massive need that they really held on to throughout time and this stuff was the love and the nurturing of family, the entertainment and everything that's going on, and taking care of the gardens that's happening around us and out there. I can go into the forest if somebody happens to get sick, which was hardly ever heard of, even in my time, is that we're going to go get the nourishments within our forest that we know. We didn't need a refrigerator to have a massive amount of stuff in this stuff. We would put our tobacco down and the stuff in out there. And we know the fish we took, the only stuff that we needed, surrendered themselves to nourish us. Their spirit moved on. They knew they were coming down here. Everybody had a purpose. So the thing is, when we have to look at responsibility and what's happening around the globe and out there, it starts with us. Pointing fingers, my gosh, it's exhausting. If I cut off every pointing finger I had, I probably could build a mansion that could cover the state of Minnesota. The thing is, you have to take back your own responsibility. You have to start with also embracing that memory of who you are. And when you sing that song, oh my gosh, I get so excited when somebody goes, oh gosh, yeah, my mom and them were from Germany and this stuff, or whatever it may be. Those are transplants that are in our living room that have been here for decades. How wonderful. We have this communication now of people that are trying to get in the borders and stuff, coming or running from, trying to get onto our land and to do whatever they're doing. Nobody's really ever asked the question, is what can we do globally to make them love their own land and not run from their homelands? It can take 5 naughty people to control 5 million people. Can you imagine if we go back to the shores when those 3 tiny ships came and the massive amount of people said no to those people, you're not coming in? Well, we can still do it today. We have to learn how to take back our power and our control. We have to stop blaming. Another thing too is I said to my grandchild the other day, she's going to college. She's going to do this and do that. People wanted the magic about who I am and all of this stuff. I never ask a person what kind of education they have, because I can see and feel it in them. Their energy just resonates it. And if they have the happiness in those tender moments and everything and stuff, I always say they're fulfilled with the most ancestral knowledge. And I am so blessed to sit within their space. It still baffles me that people spend tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars for education and stuff to go to a job that is going to take them the rest of their life just to get somewhere on it. I love schools that give away free information and stuff. This is what we need to do. We have to stop running around and being those little robots of something we call AI, artificial intelligence. To be human again is to have that value, to understand what love is, and don't flip it upside and make it lustful. Trust means that good energy instead of just having to know what their full credentials are. Don't you ever remember when you were a little kid and the first thing you were scared? What happened? Where did you feel the fear at? Did you have it in your head going, oh, wait a minute, I think I'm really afraid? No, you got it right in your gut because it was like so pulsating. I was like, oh my God, what's going on? But yet you took control of it. The other part too is another emotion is, can you remember when, oh my gosh, you were having that emotion of love? Wasn't in your head, it was like, oh my God, I'm gonna use this. No, you got all silly in the center and this stuff and your spirit's going crazy and this stuff. You have the spirit and emotional connections in this stuff that is valued. So we have to get back into the basics of just learning how to breathe, taking that breath and exhale. We have to feel the warmth and not feel the rage. There's a thing of adapting to the warmth of the fire instead of the rage of the flames. We have to find that medium. And so when we start talking about mining and the destruction of Mother Earth and what's going on, that's real. Unfortunately, they go in their little dark corners, just like a perpetrator will do. They look up people and know where they can do the most damage and the naughtiness at. And then that ripple effect will happen to the rest of the communities. Because of memory. Can you imagine them? Here's the waters. And underneath are the roots, if the land is here. And the water's coming up and it goes and that water has memory and it comes up and it's like, oh, I'm going to go visit this territory with all these trees. And what happens is those little roots are like straws and they bring up the water up into the trunk and all the way to the limbs and all this stuff, and it just sprouts beauty and all of this stuff that goes on. And then what it resonates is all that beautiful oxygen that goes. So we're all in this rhythm of a beautiful relationship. But if you destroy that memory by cutting down and deforestation, taking all those trees down, because what a lot of times things they're doing today is people are buying massive amount of land in another country and this stuff and going to the country and taking down their forests and stuff. And they go, oh no, we've got all these trees that we're planting over here that's going to supplement what is supposed to environmentally happen. I hope this makes sense, because when you think about something so common that's happening, for me, if my great-granddaughter understands what I'm saying, then I'm doing okay. Because they have to know. And when I was at Dubai, when we addressed in the main room here, was an understanding. And that understanding was one plate, one spoon, or one spoon, one table. And one plate, one table. You can, no matter what it, I guess what I'm trying to say is that we're all in this together. And when we're all in this together, we have this basic understanding. It's not, oh, what they're doing to us and what they're doing to me or whatever it may be in that there, is that we are on a pathway of healing. And the first thing it comes to healing is it's in the root of the problem, and the problem belongs to us all. And what we said within this information that we speak to presidents, the big people that have the voices in the room, you know, they're listening. You cannot go in there and say, you do this, and you come at them with such naughtiness and such, you know, hating at them, because the one thing happens is when you convey hate, you're going to receive it back. You are the mirror of your own behavior. And this is what is really, really, really important, is to remember, is we all have that control. We all have that ability to do and to change and to be the descendants of our ancestors, of what their intentions were for us. Now, what we wrote and what we said there is to make sure that we made their memory awake. And that was a key thing for this moment. Because trying to understand the foundation, the security of our knowledge, is not too long ago, we were silenced from our traditions to convert to a colonial lifestyle. Now less than 75 years. Our knowledge is being asked of. Once silenced to now, as an elder, I said, I am concerned. Humanity and nature go hand in hand. We are at a crossroads. So therefore, we declare a climate emergency on all lands. Accountability is in question. Implementation is in question. Research is far from being valid. Best practices within the health world has fallen short. To include the world's population voices of concern, one must examine the truths of each territories, and not only the rights of people, but the rights of nature. To sit with the justice systems throughout the globe, one must understand the meaning, one plate, one table. To understand finance, one must detach himself from greed and profit and sit in the circles of wellness. To educate the population that one serves, one must sit amongst the weakness and understand what made them weak. Climate finance and carbon trading, offsets and carbon pricings in Article 6, the Paris Agreement. The majority of the global population have very little understanding to what this really means and have limited knowledge of how it harms them. Wisdom and vulnerability is the base of what knowledge exists from. So how do we all move forward with universal understanding? So we continuously ask ourselves, what are some of the pressuring responses we all would love to hear? What are the risks of the systematic water, air, and earth violence? We all can respond to this as we stand in the homeland gardens we are to nourish from. We all know who entered our living rooms without being invited in. We all know the impacts of historical and intergenerational trauma. What is today's common addiction that ripples throughout all communities, whether it be healthy or poor? No matter what the interpretation is, the final results all add up to a global climate chaos, and no one, no matter how wealthy or how financially limited they are, they cannot escape these impacts. The global platform will face a disruption in the quality of air, water, fire, and earth. We're in it now. We are at a crossroads of vulnerability on both sides, but here is a statement that must stand strong. In closing, it is my hope that the ethical protocol for the protection and the use of traditional Indigenous knowledge will be utilized before our knowledge is passed on to the UNFCCC bodies, and including the SBSTA and the CNA. These are all the UN bodies. I do not want to see what I hear here as being interpreted by other people and have it possibly distorted or misused. And I thank them. This was conversations just not from the Indigenous elders, but from the elders throughout the globe that we sat with within our Elder Global meetings. Because what happens in our territories is happening all over the world. And as long as they have control over your memory, because the enticement of it saddens me that kids today can talk about the 50s music, 60s music, 70s music, and the music that's going forward. But if you ask them, what was the entertainment of their ancestors? Nothing. But we know it's in them because you are the makeup, you are the library books, you carry the knowledge of your ancestors, and we just have to awaken in each and every one of you, because that strength is in you. And so the thing is, the accountability starts with you. It's within that first breath. You have control over it. You have control over emotions. It just takes a small movement to have other footsteps follow you, to have other footsteps follow you, to the point when you turn around, you have a global audience that gets it. So I hope this might have been what you wanted to hear, or maybe not. But this has been sitting on each breath within my final days, is that it's going to be very, very important, because the greatest fear is when you have control over your ancestral knowledge. That's all the ammunition in the world that they fear. And each one of us has it in us, and we just have to awaken that in us. Miigwech, I hope there's any questions.
And as a way of honoring everything that our great grandmother Mary Lyons has said, we would like to say Chi Miigwech. In Miccosukee, we say Mato and Shonabish. Thank you very much, great grandmother Mary Lyons. We wanted to make it super quick in terms of Q&A. Does anybody have any questions for our esteemed guest? Raise your hand or send us a signal somehow, but we wanted to offer this opportunity for Q&A. Does anybody have anything they would like to ask? Okay, I'm checking the chat and I don't see anything.
You can go to gallery view and you'll see everybody.
I don't see any hands raised, so that means that we're gonna be.
Diana has their hand up.
Hey,
Diana, please, go ahead.
sure. I wanted to, well, first I wanted to say thank you so much, Mary. So much, that was so rich. And I guess I wanted to ask if you could expand a little bit on what is meant by one plate, one table, or one spoon, one table.
I'd be happy to. I know most people kind of get kind of confused on that. There's the Wampum description in out there. They've done it, but it's a general. It's those 4 elements. When you say one plate, one table, for people around the world, it's those elements. Nobody gets any more than anybody else, right? We all need water. We all need air. We all need the warmth of the fire. And guess what? We all have the same address, and it's called planet Earth. Somebody may think they may have it better, but I hate to just burst their bubble, but they don't. Because you enter this world and you're going to exit that world the same way we all came in and the same way we're all leaving. I think it's a magical mystery of fantasizing, of having those emotions float all the way through you to create mystery. But the reality is whatever your belief system is, I always say it's beautiful to come in, and it's going to be equally as beautiful to leave. We should never have to fear on exiting. If we turn around and we look at our loved ones doing wonderful stuff, then we know we did a good job. I hope that makes sense. But the thing is, when you sit and you really think about it, we always say,
Angel, what's going on? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was on mute.
Oh, you're fine. But I mean, you know, it's within your actions is what is going to cause a reaction. You know, you're going to blow up and you're going to be mad. And I think it's so nice to say, and I try to say this, you know, I'm really crabby. I'm not feeling good. And so if I hurt your feelings, I want to apologize right now. They know right up front to stay away from me, because I've got this extra energy in me, and I just have no way of controlling it right now. And so I think that's one thing, is having that honesty within you. And it's nice. The magic is, it's almost like a coloring book. You know, here's the book, and it's in black and white, and it's up to each individual to put their own beauty and their own makeup and their own color in it. We have our own value systems. We have our own religions. We have our own makeup or whatever it may be. But we also have to remember is that we're in the relationship as being original gardeners, as how to take care of that land. You know, because the absence of the original gardeners on different parts of the planet and this stuff and that is feeling those effects, because you don't have that bonding, that caring, that nurturing love, that magnet of being there. And so the biggest fear, everybody just has this huge fear. Especially with non-Indigenous people, when they hear land back, they get absolutely freaked out. They're thinking, oh my God. But you need to know where that pulse of energy, that fear of energy comes from. Because you may not have done nothing wrong, but you have to walk back in history and figure out, okay. But then you start feeling the guilt of all this other crazy stuff that's coming out. But what that's not, it's trying to figure out is how we can be in this space together, and that's caring for one another. You know, it's sad right now because, you know, the thing is, within part of our prophecies, and they said there's going to come a time where this is going to be flipped up. You see, water was never supposed to be sold. We have a water bill. We have water bottles. Water in most bottles and the stuff that's taken from has no life in it, has no value in it. It's the water that's in the streams that has the makeup of life. not when it's cleaned and processed over and it's just liquid. But yet they'll put a lot of money on it. You know, people here in America, Fiji water at one time when I was younger, oh, it's really cool to walk around with a bottle of Fiji water, but they don't realize how much water they took out of the islands down there and really did damage to it down here. Also, even over in Michigan and out there where some European companies came in and gave a few $100s to the state and took water from there and depleted it. So the thing is really looking at the makeup and devaluing things like that. You know, even fire. We have our utility bills. You got to think of it. They're all based on the elements. We have taxes on earth. It's this creator never meant that. Being a good gardener doesn't mean you become a pimp to the you just don't. I don't know how to say it any other order.
Thank you.
But
Thank
the
you.
value is there. It's supposed to be free.
Thank you.
I just wanted to know if you feel that you're being heard. You're attending the COP28, you know, and there's a 29 coming up, and who is listening and who is hearing the indigenous messages, and how are they informing the global response to climate change?
Ah, great question. Can you hear my dog back there? Hang on a sec. Yes, because you know what? It's kind of like you have an itch in the middle of the back, you got to itch it, right? You got to have that elephant in the room. You just got to be there. But the thing is, when we speak, it was very fortunate to come and speak to audiences such as yourself and the platforms where they didn't really want the Indigenous voices there. But when you talk to them of having them remember, and that is just kind of like jumpstarting their memory on what it's like to be family, their mothers, their grandmothers, when you kind of go back a little bit in their history and when you try to hit on what makes them smile, and you can usually tell because they start smiling, you know, because when you have them think about a good memory, that's when you grab onto it. Because the thing is right now is, like I said, we're up against AI technology. There's no heartbeat there. And so what we're there to put the pulse back in there. We have to continue to believe, but we have to be the elephant in the room because the world depends on us. Thank you. Great question, though.
Truly great question. Does anybody else have one more question before we continue?
Okay, Robert.
Taigwe, great grandmother. Thank you for being here and passing on your knowledge to us. How do you know, I've been on several actions, and not actions, but protections around the country. And at times, you know, it feels draining. And I do go to ceremonies. I do attend my ceremonies as well as other indigenous people ceremonies. But between those, it kind of like you lose yourself. What do you have for something like that?
You don't really lose yourself. It's time for you to take a break when you get exhausted, you know. American Indian Movement Power. I'm one of the very first one that was in there, and a lot of them are my relatives. You know, I'm right here in the heart of Minnesota. So thank you for standing in that truth. You can't fight ignorance with ignorance, because here's the thing is, and when somebody comes across, no matter what age they are, in such a authoritative mannerism of being almost a bully and discounts you and kind of tells you you're nothing, and you feel it, what you need to do is take 2 steps back and take those feelings that you're feeling and thinking, oh my God, these feelings that I'm feeling are really theirs. this really has nothing to do with me. It's that I touched a nerve and they never experienced what I experienced, what makes me feel bad. So you don't come back at them by, you know, giving them back their ignorance. My father used to always say, you know what, sometimes when you're really tired and you need energy and you ask for it and somebody comes over and makes you really mad and you want to fight them or do or yell at them or whatever it is, you're giving back a gift. What you do is we say, never attack the person. You attack the darkness with love and prayer and you walk around them. That's taking control over who you are. And it comes with a lot of training, because the worst thing that can do is when you don't return those emotions and this stuff, they get more angry because they didn't get you. And part of that frustration is it's kind of sad to see that is 1,000 times more work being in their space than it is in what we're doing in our space. We will only be in these spaces for what Creator believes us to be. For some odd reason, He opens pathways to each and every one of us. And we stand in that space and we stand in there with good intention. The only thing I always convey to everybody is that, I could go on with another huge lesson of using that F word. That F word is a key to a dark area, and it's like alcohol. It's free all over the world. And it just pushes buttons like it's like an atomic bomb, whatever it may be. When somebody's out there, when they're protesting and stuff, you effers and stuff, you never think that somebody that's marching with you might have been severely victimized or beat up, and that word is within that memory. And you just introduce and you just continue to do what the opposite side wants you to do. They got you. So you being the bigger person in this stuff and asking accountability in a way, you become more richer, because what happens is people that are marching, demonstrating, doing whatever they want to do, if they're, up this and throwing this stuff in out there, you start scaring people off, because what you're doing is you're hitting all these crazy trigger buttons in them and it's too crazy. But if you're going up and you're having a voice and you're carrying this, the next thing you turn around, you have become a leader of so many different people because they feel that energy around you, and that scares the crap out of the darkness. So you have to stand within your own space and figure it out. And you can never say, this is what they make you feel. No, you will go in there openly wanting to either take those emotions on or not. But the thing is, you have to go in there and this is what I'm standing for. You may not like what I'm standing for, but I'm not here for you to really like me right now. This water is affecting us all, and why this is really important to me. You have to say your strength and stay within that strength of your own beauty and your own righteousness and being a good gardener, as our ancestors did. And they fear that more than anything else, I can tell you. Once they get you all crazy and mad and stuff, they won. It's like, okay, they're going to be crazy to do stuff, but they won. They did it. But if they see a march that's coming and it's coming in silence, the thing is, those crowds get bigger and bigger and bigger, and that scares the crap out of them. Even when we're protesting, marching and out there, I love people that come by, give us the finger and say some crazy stuff to us, because they're going to take that information, go talk about somebody else. Those crazy people that are marching doing this, they're going to carry our fight further than somebody honks their horn and says, yeah, power to you, and they forgot about you. Because there's always going to be somebody that's sitting back there and they're going, well, I wonder why they're doing that, or what's wrong with our water, or what's wrong with this, or it opens dialect. And that dialect even gives that person that's really irritating the crap out of you. We have some of our best allies that came in through this experience, that they were out to probably run us over and this stuff, but when they finally figured out that, when they turned around and they looked at their kids and their grandkids and this stuff, and they had to ask themselves, am I the ones that are poisoning the wells that they're going to be drinking from? Am I going to be my children's death sentence? One said. That was so powerful, because one little girl too, even on a and ex-presidents trucking the flags and the stuff and that, they got down and said, you know what? I feel more comfortable down here with these people than with you up here. So you wouldn't believe the shift of things that are happening, because the greatest fear is really unconditional love. It's the best weapon in the world. Hate is like an atomic bomb that doesn't destroy the world, it destroys you. So you just have to think brighter, better, smarter, and you can move. You can move through space and time like nobody else. I hope that makes sense. But Miigwech for your work you do.
Thank you very much to Great Grandmother Mary Lyons.
Oh,
And I
man.
also want to say thank you to the participant, Mr. Robert Rosa, who just spoke up. Mr. Robert Rosa, a member of the Florida American Indian Movement, will be one of our guest speakers in a couple weeks here. So make sure to come back and listen to what they have to say as well. I do want to say that we are approaching the end of tonight's session. And so however you want to express it on screen, by emojis, wave of hands, or whatever, we would like to take this moment to say thank you very much to Great Grandmother Mary Lyons. Give me the heart emojis, give me the rainbow emojis, wave your hands, show the love, share the love for Great Grandmother Mary Lyons. Thank you very much.